Hey guys, welcome back. It is All Is Dread, and I am doing my yearly wrap up of 2022, all the horror that I watched. So, the way I'm going to divide this video is from worst to best. So, I'm also going to have a mid category just because there were a lot of movies this year and a lot of really good ones, and some that I really do want to talk about. The first one that we have is VHS 99. This is really painful to put this out onto this list. I mean I just love the VHS franchise. I think it's really entertaining. Found footage and horror anthologies are my type of jam. But this one, I feel like they kind of rushed into it with the release of 94, which is one that I really enjoyed. I will say VHS 99 does set itself apart from the previous entries in that there's not this overarching story. Instead, it has this stop motion frame narrative that ties back into one of the segments. But overall, I just found this one dull and I just could I had to be honest and put this one on the list. So at number 9, we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is one that I was not excited about, to be quite honest. Even though the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of my favorite franchises, I love Leatherface. It's like one of the most iconic horror villains. This one I wasn't excited for, and then I already had my expectations were low. And when I watched it, and just the overall the mesh of what it's trying to do, like bringing in this young adults who are or investors who are gentrifying this town, and Leatherface, of course, goes on a rampage and kills all these individuals. It just feels very hollow to me. None of the characters seem interesting to me, and even it was so bad with the script writing that I think it's kind of rude or disrespectful. I think just the route that they took in including Leela or Lila, whatever the girl's name was, the sister, that little bit of detail where she survived a mass shooting and she's afraid of guns, which obviously a lot of things come back into play later on, which is so predictable. But I just found that kind of, I don't know, it just left like a sour taste in my mouth just because I feel like they just included that to give her a little bit more depth. It does have really unique kills. Not my favorite design of Leatherface. I had to put this one on here because by the end of it, I was like, didn't do anything for me. So that's why it's in my number 9 spot. So next at number 8, we have Flux Gourmet. So this one's on the list because it is just so absurd. I cannot get through most of the absurdity. And to be quite honest, this film, the monotony, it just, throughout the whole movie, it never changes tone. There's never a shift. So for me, it was just bland, even though there are some interesting ideas, and I'm sure there's like a lot of metaphors being used. You have this culinary collective who's using food and producing sounds, doing a whole bunch of performance art. But then you have this journalist or documentarian who's documenting all what's going on at the institute, and he has gastrointestinal disorders. And then you have somebody who has, I think, celiac disease, another person who's vegan. So it's definitely talking about, I think, food culture and just arts and food as either a waste or artistic expression. But I'm sure there's a lot more with this film that I'm just leaving out. But you guys get the gist. It was lacking. Like I said, monotonous. At number 7, we have The Invitation. So this one is one that I just recently watched. I put this one off just because the concept it wasn't alluring or interesting to me. And I think the reason why is because I'm not really drawn to vampire films. I think there are like a handful of vampire films that I like, but this one was too polished for me. It was really generic. I felt like the story really didn't go anywhere. I felt like it could have benefited from an R rating when there are like creepy scenes, and I do enjoy the gothic atmosphere, but a lot of the kills are cut away, so you don't really see anything. So I'm like, that's when I was making faces while watching the film. I'm like, okay, all right, this is not my type of horror. Again, another one that just felt dull to the end. So, which sucks because I feel like it's a missed opportunity. It could have really done well. Coming in at number 6, oof, this one was difficult to do, and I actually did a review of this movie. It's Halloween Ends. I had to put this on the worst list. I'm sorry, just because while I appreciate the risk that they took, and I appreciate the homage to Halloween 3 Season of the Witch with the font and everything, and it's very similar how the two films are, going against the grain. This film just felt like it was trying to do too many things at once. The characters never felt like fleshed out enough for me, Corey in particular. Michael, who makes a cameo appearance, who's living in the sewers, like friggin' Ratma. I had to put this in the worst just because it is the one that feels like the most disjointed. And I know some people like say, well, what do you want them to do? Like just make another Halloween movie where it's just the same thing, Michael killing people. And I'm like, well, yeah, actually, you could totally do it in a more inventive way, or cut out Michael and have this like new individual who's like the sole like character, and the story is entirely about him, which I mean it kind of is, but they could have done it in a more tasteful manner instead of like the ending that we got, which I mean I'm happy that they finally put evil to rest, but the way that they did it was so lackluster to me. It just felt like they just wanted to rush through everything. And overall, I'm just not a fan of the H40 trilogy. I'll just be quite honest. So that is me just being entirely brutally honest. There were things that I really enjoyed that I mentioned, and I went deeper into my review of this film. But overall, like the more that I look at the bigger picture and this H40 trilogy, it's not for me. I'm sorry. It's not for me. Coming in at number 5 for me is Jeepers Creepers Reborn. I just watched this one recently, like 2 days ago. It is bad, trust me. The involvement of like this cult-like followers who feed the creeper, and the creeper wants the girl's baby. I will say this has some of the worst acting, laziest script writing, bad green screens. I mean, that was abysmal. It was so distracting. I don't know if anyone has watched this film, but when you see that, it just feels so weird watching that. You're like, what? It's a total distraction. But the one-liners, which were so awful, it made me laugh. So that's why I place it at number 5. I didn't place it even higher than that because the one-liners, a lot of moments in this movie just made me freaking laugh my ass off. I'm not gonna lie. It was just so bad. It was entertaining.
How do you like those peepers, bitch?
I I don't know, and I feel like I'm gonna get some like people rolling their eyes saying like, you found that entertaining. Yes. It was weird. I'm not gonna lie, the design of this creeper is again terrible. And it's just very strange. Like the creeper's actions in this film, it just doesn't seem like something that the creeper would do. So I feel like they really pushed it in that slasher feel, which was just, yeah. All right, coming in at number 4 is They Slash Them. I think this movie had a lot of potential. This one obviously involves a group of young teens, LGBTQ plus teens, who go to this conversion gay camp therapy. While I think the idea of conversion therapy is horrific on its own, they could have really harnessed that and really made it into something truly horrifying on screen. But instead, we got this film, which basically they're being stalked by a mass killer, but it doesn't become a slasher, which is what it's supposed to be, I guess, towards the very end. So you've got like something that's just not gelling really well. Between the scene where they're like breaking out into song, I was like, what am I even watching right now? All the characters seem really lame to me, and there's like just the worst reveal because you could spot it from a mile away. I could tell who the killer was and the motives behind it. It's just so generic. This movie was just grueling to get through because like it didn't know which direction it wanted to go. So it was like meshing so many things that were just not gelling together. Like I said, it was just not for me. Coming in at number 3, we have Choose or Die. This is one that I had no intentions of watching. I fell asleep months ago. And then I recently rewatched it because I realized I never finished it. And I know why. It was, no. This one was just bland to me. Even the idea, which I think tech horror can be really interesting. But upon my second viewing, I just found so many illogical inconsistencies that I just could not get past, that I just found so annoying. All the characters were annoying to me. None of them like had any redeeming qualities. I just found this movie so tropey. Even the characters, they were just so tropey, like the typical drug dealer and, cringy creeper dude. And every kill was just so lackluster, and the over editing of like the glitch and static effects, and the 8-bit editing, it was just so cheesy, but not in a good kind of cheese. It was just blech. Like by the end of it, I was like, did I really just sit through all of this when I was bored from start to finish? I mean, I finished it, but I was not happy. Coming in at number 2, I have Grim Cuddy, another one that I recently watched before the year wrapped up. First of all, the title is just stupid. It's asinine to me, Grim Cuddy. That name is just, like I said, horrendous. But then you have this Momo-esque creature who is just wobbling along, which is laughably, like, just terrible, but funny, who looks like a Dollar Tree version of Ryuk from Death Note. But this movie, just the design of this creature alone is just atrocious. But it's honestly one of the worst films that I watched this year. It is so heavy-handed with like what it's trying to drill into the audience. This whole idea of like this creature being used as a metaphor for hysteria and people or teens self-harming. It's just, it is just way too much in your face, and it's not even done in a great and subtle way. It's like over the top, overacting, bad acting at that, which is really sad because I like Shannon Sossman. So to see her in this film, I was like, oh man, it dragged on for way too long. But ultimately, Grim Cuddy was just on some other shit, to be quite honest. I didn't even, like, who approved this movie? My number 1 for worst has more redeeming qualities, but I put it in number 1 just because I was so upset with how much I was anticipating it. Anyway, back to Grim Cuddy. This movie was just, no, not for me. It was just, ugh. Like, what were they trying to accomplish with this? Like, just a huge ass PSA. All right, guys, and at my number 1, we have Crimes of the Future. This one is by David Cronenberg. It's a dystopian body horror drama. This one was one that I was really highly anticipating. I actually do like a lot of David Cronenberg's films, and body horror is one of my favorite subgenres within horror. But this one, objectively, when you see this film, like the trailer, it looks like it would be really amazing. I mean, that's why it's just shot so beautifully. There's a lot of great imagery involved and a lot of interesting concepts thrown out there. It's a very unique film is what I'm trying to say. But there are no tonal shifts in this movie. I felt like it just flatlined. It just kept going at like a very stagnant rate where it's just like, all right, it just wasn't building to anything really interesting to any moment that I really found like appealing at all. And like I said before, it's a very unique concept with how far human evolution can go, how far the human anatomy can be pushed, and the importance of bodily autonomy. But this movie just never delivers for me. It never does. It actually infuriated me, which is why it's at my number 1, because it was the only movie out of all these other films like I could laugh at and be like, it's not a good film. That's my opinion on that. This was the only one by the end of it where I had to take a cold shower because I was so irate at what I watched, because I was like, it didn't do anything for me. It just left me so unsatisfied. I think it's also because I spent $20 to rent it, and I was so hyped up, and I'm like, this is one of the movies I know it's going to be one of my favorites of the year. It just flipped it entirely for me. It just ended up being like the worst, obviously, because I have it on this spot, but it's just, I can't with this movie. But I think it's just because it was painstakingly awful to get through. It just felt like it just dragged on. All the characters felt like really awkward between their interactions. The idea of like, you have these activists and you have these performance artists and you have this kid who has the ability to consume metal. It just, I don't know, all these things that just felt like it led to nothing. But maybe I just didn't get it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not the target audience for this film, which is so weird saying that because I love a lot of David Cronenberg's works, but no, it was so unsatisfying. Like I said, I was so upset and irate watching this film. Like when it ended, I was like, what the fuck did I actually just sit through? And what was the point of this? For any hardcore David Cronenberg fans, please do not be upset. I know some people are going to roll their eyes and be like, really? Out of all the films, you put this as your worst? But you have Grim Cuddy and Jeepers Creepers at number 5, but you put this one at your worst? I'm just being honest, because it's the only film that really, truly triggered me. Now that you've seen my worst of 2022 for horror, let's move on to the mids. All right, guys, coming in at number 10, we have the new Hellraiser. So this one is on here just simply because it was okay. That's personally how I feel about it. But I think also just because Hellraiser has never been a personal favorite of mine. I said this during my review. The franchise has never been a favorite. I enjoy the first film like a lot. I love it, but it's also not one that I always like want my first option or first choice to revisit because like I said, this franchise and the sequels, my God. But this one, what I will give credit for is that it blows all those sequels out of the water. Coming in at number 9, we have Deadstream. So this one, said I love found footage, involves this guy who goes to this abandoned haunted house. He's this internet personality who goes and does a live stream. He's really obnoxious.
I will be spending one night alone in a haunted house. Don't forget to smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, and follow me on Live.
But yeah, overall, Deadstream was a decent film. I mean, I think they could have pushed the boundaries a bit more because, and by that, I mean, they could have totally changed the tone of the film because at certain parts it gets a little too cheesy, but it's an enjoyable cheese. I think they were inspired more so by Evil Dead, if I'm not mistaken. But the horror elements in this film, if they would have made it more of like a serious tone, I think it would have been even more effective. But that's just my opinion. At number 8, we have The Sadness. This one, I think it was a very divisive film when it came out, this Taiwanese horror, because I think there were some people on one end of the spectrum that were like, oh my God, this is so brutal, this is disgusting. Some people that are like, this wasn't even that bad. I don't think it's like the worst movie that I've ever seen, like the most gory and like insane wild movie. I think for me, most horrific points of this movie, I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but it's what's not seen, like what's implied, especially with one of the characters who's just creepy to say the least, and he does something to one of the female characters and involves her eye. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not going to go into detail with it, but yeah, this movie definitely was brutal, and it was an interesting take on like a viral infection. From what I remember, I think that's what it is, because I don't remember if they are zombies or not, or if this is more like a situation like The Crazies. But yeah, I really like this one, but it's just going to go in my mid because it's not like one of my top best of the year. But I had a really good time with it, even though certain parts were, like I said, really disturbing. At number 7, we have Watcher from 2022. I cannot remember for the life of me what the actress's name is, but it's the same actress that was in It Follows, which I watched not too long ago. But Watcher, I actually really liked. It's more of like a thriller, I would say. But this one is really a surprise for 2022 because I was not expecting to watch this. And when I did watch it, I think a lot of the buildup and tension is what really got to me, like what stuck with me. Especially, I think the character being American and she's in Romania, I believe, and having that disconnect from everyone. And so when I watched this film, I thought it was going to go in a direction where it was all in her mind. But nope. It's definitely a thriller, and there's definitely a really satisfying conclusion to it. I think I don't want to say it's a run-of-the-mill story because, I mean, I think it's stuff that we've seen with thrillers before, but I do like the execution of it. At number 6, we have Orphan First Kill. I'll be quite honest, Orphan, I avoided that movie for years because I was just, I guess in my mind, I prejudged the film and I was like, it looks terrible years ago when it first came out. And then Blair and I watched Orphan First Kill and I really liked it. So then I went and watched Orphan and I really liked Orphan. Orphan First Kill, basically prequel involving Esther and this family who, you know, she's posing as this missing daughter, but some secrets are revealed and it just gets maddening. And those are the kind of movies that I really like. I really like when certain personalities like mix together and you see like this insane battle. I'm not going to give it too much away because I think you already kind of know what direction I'm going with. I don't want to reveal the twist, but man, the twist was really good in this film. Actually, it got me. When I compare both films, I will say I prefer the original or the first film more. But Orphan First Kill is like right up there. Like they're both really good. So I would definitely recommend watching this one. And Esther has become like one of my favorite villains in a horror movie. And she has some really funny moments in this film. Like when she's behind the wheel and she gets pulled over. All right, at number 5, we have Resurrection. So this one, I don't even know how to really classify it. Would it be a horror thriller or a drama thriller or drama horror? I'm so bad with genres and labeling things, but this one involves Rebecca Hall, who's this businesswoman. She sees somebody from her past. She goes down this road where she starts to succumb to this individual and like just being manipulated and being coerced into doing certain things or kindnesses. I think that's what he referred to them as. It's a story on like abuse and toxic relationships, and I think it's done in a really great way. I definitely enjoyed this one, but I don't think it's as like it didn't hit the mark for me as much as like her other film, The Night House. And toward the end, it got into some strange territory, which reminded me of another film that I watched, which is also on this list, but higher. Number 4, we have Nope. So we watched this film in IMAX and it was a tremendous experience. It is a very unique movie and a unique take on UFOs, or I should say aliens, creatures from above. I loved it. But I placed it in mid because while I did enjoy it so much, I think it was too out there for me. And toward the end, when it does get to revealing what this thing is, it's so unique, but like I said, it's too out there for me. It's so difficult talking about this movie because I really did enjoy it for what it is. But overall, I'm still going to be watching Jordan Peele films. I mean, I really loved Get Out and Us. Nope is an exceptional film. It's definitely worth a watch. It doesn't rank as high for me personally as the other 2 films I just mentioned, but it's definitely worth a watch. And I would definitely need another, like a second viewing to really like kind of absorb everything that I watched the first time, because it was a lot to take in and I felt like certain points did drag on. All right, in my number 3 spot, I have Prey. This one is a very surprising film of the year for me. I really did like this one. I've never been like the biggest fan of the Predator franchise, even though I love like AVP. Like I think I'm more of like an Alien, lover. Prey was an awesome prequel or origin story to how the Predator comes about. And the design of this creature is so cool. The kills in this movie, awesome. Perfection. Love it. Our lead is fantastic. And the fact that it's focusing on this Native American tribe, I love that we're getting this POV from their point of view and how they are handling this formidable opponent in whatever century this is taking place in. With the weapons that they have. I thought this film overall was a solid entry into the franchise. My number 2 is Dashcam. Yep. I actually really like this movie a lot. I know this is like kind of controversial to say maybe, just because the main character, our protagonist, Annie, she is a lot to take in. That's all I will say about that. She is a lot. But when you move past this character, who's, by the way, like her stance, like her viewpoints do not align with mine. I said this in my review. So I don't agree with the things she's saying, but if you can get past her, I think the horror elements in this film are so effective and so creepy, and it's just a chaotic, wild ride of a roller coaster. It is just insanity for me because it's just going in like so many directions. It's pulling me in every which way, and I'm like, what is going on right now? So for that, I do enjoy this film because it was just, I didn't know where it was headed, honestly. But the main character, yes, I can see why a lot of people are turned off by this film, just because a lot of what I've seen is just that she is an asshole. And I mean, you're right. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I can't take away from how like funny and creepy this movie was. And I love found footage, so this one was like a huge surprise for me, which I never actually gave it a rating on Letterboxd, but I should probably do that. Honestly, if I were to give Dashcam a rating like right now on camera, I'd probably give it a 3. Probably a 3. Yeah, I think that's fine. That's more of like a mid area. All right, and I think my number 1 in the mid category is really gonna also trigger some people. But I'm just being honest, it's Men from 2022, Alex Garland's film. I actually really like this movie. It took me a while to like really like sit on it and think about it. And I know it got into some really strange territory, like a lot of metaphorical uses with, context of birth being presented on screen. But I actually really did like this movie, and I like a lot of the biblical references that are used, even though a lot of that, like anything biblical, is not really like my interest. But I like the direction this film was going. I thought it was beautiful. The imagery was great. Like the landscape was great. The countryside, the English countryside was just beautiful. A lot of scenes, especially the tunnel and how like creepy that is when she's like making sounds and it's echoing through and it's just becoming more ominous and just I don't know. I can't really say too much about this movie. I think anyone who hasn't watched it, if you're getting deterred from watching it because a lot of people are being negative or saying this is the shittiest film of the year, I would say watch it for yourself and come up with your own opinion on it. I actually love the body horror. And that's something that people complain about with this movie is that it gets weird. And I mean, it does, but it's all like a metaphor. Let's go on to our next section. We're going to go on to the best, but first I wanted to talk about a few honorable mentions. That is Christmas Bloody Christmas, which was a total surprise. Hatching, which pains me that I'm putting it right just here as an honorable mention because it was such a good film. Also, You Won't Be Alone, amazing film, loved it. Bodies, 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 which was a complete surprise because I prejudged the shit out of that movie. I thought it was going to be like the one A24 film that was just, that I'm going to hate. And I actually loved it. I know so many people are like divided with that movie, but I thought it was really clever. And Fresh. Yes, Fresh did not make my top 10, but it was, I kept switching things out, but Fresh is just such an interesting take on cannibalism. Number 10, we have Smile. This film actually really surprised me, and I love psychological horror films. While it's not the most original film, I would say, it follows a very similar formula that we've seen in other films, but I actually really enjoyed it, and I love the third act so much, which I think some people don't feel the same way, but I love when it gets to the practical effects and like really revealing what this entity is. I actually love this film. It was after like the first watch, I will say I was like, I'm not sure. I like it, but I'm like, The rewatch, it solidified everything, and I'm like, I'm putting this here. All right, guys, coming in at number 9, we have one that I reviewed, which is actually, it's gotten a lot of traction. I think I saw it by chance at a film festival. Like, I didn't actually go to the film festival, but purchased tickets to watch it online. After watching this movie, it was like a what the fuck moment, but then it sank with me. I was like, this is really good. And that is The Outwaters from 2022. This one, loved it. The way I could describe this film is basically it's a Lovecraftian sort of cosmic horror, body horror, hallucinogenic type film, like where you're just like tripping out, trying to unfold decipher what's happening to these individuals who go to the Mojave Desert, who are filming a music video, and things go awry quickly. I don't really know how else to describe this movie other than like not giving too much away, but toward the end is where I really love this film because there's self-mutilation involved and it took me by surprise. That's all I'm going to say. I can't say too much because I only watched it the one time, but that one time was enough for it to stick with me. Like I've been thinking about that movie so much. And if anybody doesn't know, this movie, there's a teaser for it during Terrifier 2, which I found really interesting. I'm like, it's coming out, guys. I don't know if somebody picked it up or if it's getting a wider release, what's happening with it, but really excited. Coming in at number 8, we have The Cursed, which came out in 2021 for the Sundance Film Festival, but it wasn't released to the US to a wide release in theaters until February of 2022. Earlier, when I did my worst and I said I'm not really into vampire films, this one involves werewolves. Werewolves all day. The good, bad, the ugly, I will watch a werewolf movie. So the gist of this film is that it takes place in 19th century France when a man arrives to investigate a bunch of murders that are taking place. It has to do with a curse, obviously, as a title, which, by the way, let me just say, 8 for Silver, I think that was the original title, way better. Should have gone with that because The Curse just sounds like cursed, with Christina Ricci. So it confused me that they went, it's just so ironic that they went with that title, which is also a title for a werewolf film from back in the 2000s. This movie is really surprising to me, and it's shocking because there's a group of gypsies that are basically, they're killed. It's a whole genocide, and it was just horrific having that shot where it's like peering down and you're getting that view of like the whole massacre. Like I said in my review, I did a review of this film. It was just incredibly shocking. The design of the werewolf is very unique. I feel like this went under the radar for a lot of people. Like, I don't think I've seen anyone really talk about this movie, but I think it deserves the recognition. It's a great gothic feel, and I think the performances are just amazing. This is definitely like a Guillermo del Toro-esque sort of film. All right, guys, coming in at number 7, we have The Black Phone, which features Ethan Hawke, who plays the Grabber, a serial killer who abducts children, takes them to his basement, and kills them ultimately. But also, the Grabber is probably like one of the most interesting characters, interesting villains in this horror movie, even though I think it's more of like a thriller than an actual horror, because I really wish they would have ramped up like more of the horrific moments. I wish it would have actually like really would have been more impactful. And like I said in my review, I love the setting. I love the time period that it's set in. I love the 8mm film that it's shot on, what we get to see, which is similar to like Sinister. And even though the Grabber is not that fleshed out, like you don't know too much of his backstory, actually, I think that works because he's just a very ominous and just mysterious character, and like which each layer of the mask that he has. Yeah, very interesting character. Coming in at number 6, we have The Menu, which is a big surprise that came out in 2022. I actually love this dark comedy. It is so funny. The dry, dark humor works for me. Can't say enough. I mean, like the performances, Anya Taylor-Joy, big standout. The actress who played Elsa, which I can't recall right now, don't judge me. I'll probably put it up, but standout. Ray Fiennes. I mean, this like cult of personality type of mentality, like what's going on with the kitchen staff. I think one of the most interesting things about the film is that I thought it would be a lot more bloody, like more blood fueled and like some gore, but it's really not. It's more of like the tension and the buildup of what's happening. Like I said in my review, I think the payoff was not what I expected, but at the same time, I think that was the way to actually end the film, so I'm actually really happy with it. Coming in at number 5, we have Bones and All. This is a coming-of-age story involving cannibalism and discovering yourself. I guess it's a bigger metaphor for feeling ostracized and feeling shunned from society. But you have Marin who meets Lee and a romantic relationship forms, and you get to really see like how these individuals bond who are both cannibals and how they try to survive on the road. I just love the way this movie meshes the horror, the romance, the drama. It just flows really well together for me. Yeah, I got really emotional at certain parts, I will say that. I mean, amazing performances. There's a really creepy character played by Mark Rylance in the film, Sully, who, yeah, again, like I said, a lot of like the interactions, especially with Marin and Sully when he's driving that pedo van and he's telling her to get in and she's like, no. And I'm like yelling at the TV, like, yes, follow your intuition, girl. Do not get in that fucking van with that creepy guy, because there's something so off about him, so off-putting. So I mean, I really think she's the standout of this film, even though I really like, other than Sully, Marin, because yeah, the performances given and how like naive and like sweet she is, but watching this girl blossom into who she is becoming, the fact that it takes place in the 80s, I love that decade, especially for horror. So coming in at number 4, I'm really shocked with, because this list I kept changing, but ultimately I put it here, and that is X. Ti West, beautiful, beautiful film. I actually really like the homage to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the direction that this film goes with like the adult filmmakers going to Texas to film a porno, and things go sour like immediately once they meet Pearl and Howard. And I do like the ideas that are presented, you know, the idea of like growing old and not wanting to be confined to the limitations that you have and like where you're remaining, which I mean, as you know from the prequel, a lot of similarities with Maxine. But yeah, this movie was just so entertaining. The cast was great. The kills were great, and they kind of subverted my expectations there, because I thought I had like a formula. I thought I was going to go in like a different pattern for each person that was going to die. So that was enjoyable. Just the ending, the interaction between Pearl and Maxine, done so well. The fact that she plays both characters, for anyone who doesn't know, spoiler there, but yeah, if you haven't watched X, great film. Number 3 is Pearl. So I actually moved Pearl higher than X. Even though I love the slasher feel of X so much, I think Pearl overall, the storyline is better. And I love this character study of Pearl and why she is the way that she is. There are some really intense scenes involving the dinner table with how she has her family positioned. The Gator, you get to see Theta again, and just new people that get in her way of wanting to become a fucking star. So I have no complaints. I thought the monologue was so tremendous and it actually made me tear up. Like I was kind of empathetic for her, not empathetic towards her murdering people, but it's just certain things she was saying that like really hit me in the feels, and I was like, ugh. And the the ending credits, it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna say much about that, but that definitely got me as well. I mean, Pearl is just a character of her own. There's definitely a lot of nuances there. There are a lot of things that distinguish her from like all other killers. I don't know, something so unique about Pearl that I just really enjoy. Coming in at number 2, we have Barbarian. This one, total surprise. I mean, I don't think I even watched a trailer for this film. I just saw something regarding either Bloody Disgusting or Fangoria, how people were perceiving this film and how much attention it was getting. And I'm like, okay, this went under my radar and I'm so curious about it. It took me on a wild roller coaster ride, honestly, because this movie basically involves Tess, a young woman who goes in town for an interview, stays at this Airbnb when it's double booked, meets Bill Skarsgård's character, which I don't remember what his name is, Keith. And it makes you think, it makes you have this like, you know, kind of like you want to grab her like, no, don't do it, don't stay. There's probably something weird about him. And then it gets even weirder. This is just a wild movie, like I said, because one moment it's just so horrifying. You're like, what is actually happening? Fear of the unknown. You're down this dark area that you can't really see what's happening, but you hear certain things. And I think the audio just coupled with what's happening, it's so effective. But then it does a total shift, like Quentin Tarantino style, where you're like, wait, what? New introduction? Who is this character? Which goes from horrifying to just comedic, and it just pulls it off, is what I'm trying to say. It just does it in a tremendous way that I'm like, what? Sad that I don't have it in my number 1, and I know some people might criticize my number 1, but Barbarian, one that I would love to own at a certain point. All right, and coming in at number 1, can you guys guess what that is? It's the only one that I haven't mentioned. I did a review of Terrifier 2. I know, wow. A gory, blood-splattered film is my number 1. After switching up my top 10 list so many times, I'm like, I was looking at my Letterboxd reviews and I'm like, I don't want to strictly go off like my initial reaction. I want to go off like what I'm feeling now. And then I was also looking at my videos and how I was reacting to certain things. But I noticed like Terrifier 2, I was so excited. And I was thinking about it now and I was like, that was actually like one of my favorite theatrical experiences, seeing that movie and seeing everybody's reaction, seeing how disgusted they were. I'm a sick person. Enjoying other people's misery in that setting, at least. It was funny. So I actually really enjoyed Terrifier 2. Just Art the Clown, character that I want to continue. Don't stop, Art the Clown. The Terrifier franchise, keep it going. I mean, Damien Leone, whatever he brings out, I'm sure it's going to be really amazing. And I cannot wait for what the future holds, because this movie, I've been wanting a gory movie, and this year we got that. I mean, I've watched several gory films since Terrifier 2. I mean, I've always watched gory films. It's not like my number 1 main go-to, but like I said in my review, Art the Clown is like a rare exception. I just truly satisfied with this year. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry I didn't go into extreme detail with every little thing. It was just a lot of films to cover, a lot to bring out from here, from my noggin, old memory from certain films I haven't seen in like a while. Let me know what films you guys like though. What are your favorite horror movies of 2022? And if you're excited for what's coming out in 2023, I want to do like a whole horror update of what's coming out next year. But yeah, guys, I hope everyone has a great new year. Thank you for sticking around, by the way. I'm definitely coming back with a lot more content. You know, I do this for fun. This is a great outlet. I love making videos. I love talking about horror. So be safe, have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.